Hi, I'm Roberta. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to make a Middle Eastern classic. Thin fingers of phyllo pastry with a filling of seasoned lamb. Now, they're sometimes called cigars, ladies' fingers, cigarette, all sorts of things, but the concept is the same throughout the Middle East. Thin pastry, be it phyllo, brick, waka, whatever, with some, in our case, some minced lamb, flavoured with some onions, some garlic, and a few other ingredients that are very Middle Eastern. Cumin and coriander, very typical, but also cinnamon, which in the West we often think of as a sweet spice, but very often used in meat dishes in the Middle East. I suspect it's because originally the meat was quite old meat, and I don't mean it was off, but it was from mature animals, especially the lamb would not have been lamb, it would have been more hogget or mutton. And so it had quite a strong aroma, and the cinnamon, the sweet spices, helped to mask that aroma. As do things like lemon zest, which we're popping in here, that brightens it up, and the very typical Middle Eastern, North African idea of putting dried fruit in with savoury dishes as well. So we have some beautiful currants that have been soaking there for a little while, which we'll drain and toss through. So the first thing we need to do is fry off our onion, add our garlic and our spices and our lamb, and get that nice and brown. Let's go to the stove and make that happen. So we get our olive oil nice and hot over a medium heat, in with our onion, good pinch of salt. This is becoming repetitive, isn't it? Onion, olive oil, salt. I think every dish apart from the desserts in the Middle East starts with that. And I want a bit of caramelization. I want some color because there's a lot of flavor in that I think marries really well with the meat. So we're going to cook that uncovered for a change over a medium heat for about 10 minutes or so until we get a bit of color happening. So after we've started to get a bit of color, in with our garlic, in with our spices. We're just going to cook them for a minute, maybe even less, and I might lower the heat now too, we don't want to burn them. We just want to smell that lovely cooked garlic aroma and smell those spices coming through. And despite the fact that it really is very little cinnamon, that's the aroma that I'm smelling. Maybe also because it's an unusual aroma when we're cooking savoury dishes. Okay, in with our meat. And we're just sending you a lamb patty, 100% lamb mince. You can buy lamb mince from your butcher. You can buy lamb and hand chop it if you can be bothered, but I certainly can't. And we're just going to flatten it out for a minute or so and let it fry. Turn the heat down so the onions and spices aren't burning. And I find the easiest way to do this is not to mess with it too much, to let it get a good brown crust on one side, and then we'll flip it over to the other side. So after a few minutes, our mince is browned nicely. We'll flip it over onto the other side. And now we also want to start to break it up, because we want quite a fine mince to stir through our other ingredients and roll up in our phyllo. We'll just cook it for another couple of minutes. There we are, our lamb mince. I just crushed that up in the pan to break it up into small pieces. It smells fabulous. It's not the cinnamon that's dominant anymore. You can smell the coriander, the cumin, the lovely meaty smell. Drained my currants. Just give them a bit of a squeeze because we don't want too much liquid in here. Just gently. They're going in. So's the lemon zest. And I like to zest this freshly over the bowl, because if it's giving off lots of lovely citrus oil, we want to capture that as well for that lovely vibrant aroma that gives us. There we go, I think that's most of it. Into there it goes. Oh, looks great too. I'll give that a stir through. And then I just need it to sit long enough to cool down, because I want to shape it into 8 little balls or logs ready to wrap in our phyllo pastry. So once our mince has cooled down, we're just going to do a rough divide into 8 pieces. We want it as even as possible, but this is not pastry, it doesn't have to be precise. So a little piece, and just, you'll find it squeezes together quite well. There's lots of nice juice in there. We just want to make rough log shapes because that's how they're going to be rolled up in our pastry. So little balls, little logs if possible. It's just going to be easier to assemble it if we've already planned ahead and made these little patties. Now you don't want to overcook your lamb because this is going into the oven now and it's going to cook again. So yes, you want to get rid of most of the pink, but you still want it nice and juicy. And all that beautiful fat that you're seeing there, that's the flavour. One of the things I love about lamb is that beautiful natural fat that it has. And you're going to be eating this with salads, with legumes, with all sorts of very fresh and healthy ingredients. This is just one little element. So a balanced diet, that's what we want. Once you're ready to work with your phyllo, you want to work fairly quickly because it does dry out. Ideally, if you have a big workspace, you'll keep them covered with a clean, dry cloth and work with one sheet at a time. I'm working on this small bench, so we're just going to work quickly. We have our melted butter here, and I'm just going to brush half the sheet, the half closest to me. So we're going to fold this in half to roll up our cigars. That's torn down the middle, but that's fine because that's where I'm going to fold it anyway. So working with phyllo, you do need to be a little bit diligent. It is fragile, but because we're rolling it up, that hides a multitude of sins as well. So there we go, folding the first one over in half like that, and move it here so I can cut. I'll just cut it down so I now have two pieces. And a log on the end there with about 1 centimetre all around. Fold in the sides to cover that up. Doesn't matter if we get a little bit of crumbling, it just depends how long the phyllo's been out for. Giving our butter a stir so we get the flavour of those lovely milk solids. More butter along here and rolling away. Roll, 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 ready to go onto our baking tray. So here we have our lady's fingers on the tray ready to go into the oven. We do want to place them seam side down so that holds them in place. And guess what? A little more butter over the top. These are so delicious. They smell amazing with the spicing and the onions and the butter. They're juicy with the lamb and the butter and the olive oil and those beautiful currants as well. So we'll brush them down, we'll pop them in the oven. These do reheat well too, so if you're making a larger batch and you've got some leftovers, I've reheated them very successfully in a warm oven after they've been in the fridge for a day or two. So there we are, nice and buttery, ready to pop them in the oven. Here are our beautiful crisp lady's fingers out of the oven. That one's looking pretty perfect. Close that one. There's a couple where I didn't follow my own advice and I didn't put them on the seam and they've blown up a bit like that. Now they're going to taste just as delicious, but that's an example of what not to do. These ones are perfect, they're for the guests. Those ones, they can stay in the kitchen and I'm going to eat them. Yum. I'm not going to eat them now because they're really hot. And that's the other beautiful thing about these. You certainly don't want to serve them cold, but they're perfect just warm. So you can make them, get everything else ready. You don't want to be biting into them piping hot. So this is very forgiving food that sits around quite nicely while you're chatting, drinking, enjoying life the Middle Eastern way. Enjoy.